Hi, my name is Todd Audyatis. I'm the Associate Dean of Admission at Bridgewater State University. I'm going to speak with you for the next 30 minutes as a dad of a junior in high school and not as an Associate Dean. You see, this presentation evolved out of a series of recent conversations with my son about his struggles with the college search process due to restrictions brought on by the coronavirus. I'm going to share with you the same advice I've given him. I realize some of my colleagues in the admission business may not appreciate me sharing this kind of candid insider information that we'll cover in this presentation. That's fine. My concern is with helping you, students like my son, to navigate the college search process under these extraordinary circumstances. And that's what we're going to do. It may seem like the coronavirus is sabotaging your college search process. Your high school is closed until the fall. Proms and sports seasons have been canceled, and your classes have moved online. This isn't the kind of junior year you'd imagined. This spring and summer, or when you were planning to visit campuses to whittle down your list of schools before you start applying in the fall. Virtual college fairs and campus tours are not the only changes in store for you at this stage in your college search process. The ripple effects of the global pandemic promise to follow this class of college-bound students through the entire search, application, and selection process. It's easy to get overwhelmed with this process under normal circumstances, and no one blames you should you be struggling to find motivation when the world has been turned upside down. I'm here to tell you that not all the news is bad. In fact, changes brought on by the coronavirus may result in you receiving offers of admission from stretch schools or funding that you weren't anticipating. I'll highlight a few points for you on this slide, and then we'll spend the rest of our time unpacking each one of these ideas separately. So, colleges and universities are doing more innovative online outreach to make up for those in-person contacts that they would have otherwise had with you at college fairs or campus visits and tours. They're likely going to be flexible with the application requirements and potentially with deadlines in the fall. Colleges and universities are going to be scrambling to fill their incoming classes, and the analytics that they've relied on up until now aren't going to help. So you may see more offers of admission this fall. And finally, they're also going to be offering their own merit scholarships in addition to leveraging the federal assistance that we've received to enhance our financial aid. Let's talk about some of the innovative outreach that you're likely to see. Every college and university has canceled their campus visitation programs at least until this summer. That means we've all been scrambling to offer online alternatives to our traditional daily tours, information sessions, and even our admitted student days this spring. In the next few slides, we'll talk in more detail about outreach that they're doing, like online info sessions, virtual and self-guided tours, and we're also going to talk about the importance of you filling out online inquiry forms. You'll likely find that almost every institution is offering live online information sessions. For example, at Bridgewater State University, admissions information sessions and live question and answer with tour guides occur during the afternoons on Monday through Wednesday. We're also offering online events on Thursday evenings to make it easier for working parents to participate. We even have the occasional live webinar hosted by specific academic or administrative departments. Now, other schools are undoubtedly doing similar things, which will be listed on the admission page of the websites. So you ought to be on the lookout for online alternatives to campus tours. The most popular alternatives is the virtual campus tour. Virtual tours are almost never as good as the real thing, but it's guaranteed to be a better depiction of the place than you'd get from the static pictures on a website. They're at least worth checking out for those campuses that you've not yet seen in person, and they ought to hold you over until the campuses are open for live in-person tours. In most cases, you're still able to visit campus to walk around, like public parks, provided you practice appropriate social distancing. I don't advise trying to access any buildings or attempting to schedule in-person appointments with anyone. However, if you're getting cabin fever and there's a campus within easy driving distance, it's worth driving over to take a walk around. For example, BSU has self-guided tour brochures available outside our Welcome Center, you see on your screen here. And we also encourage prospective students to use our virtual tour on their phones as a personal guide. My final bit of advice on the topic of online outreach is that you use this time online at home to fill out inquiry forms, which sign you up to be on school mailing lists. Do this for every place that you think you are even the least bit interested in applying to for the fall. I also like to encourage students to create a new email address that you use for all of your communications with colleges starting at the inquiry stage. And now parents ought to have access to this account as well. And that way, all official contact will be in one place and everyone in the house will be on the same page. Once you've decided where you enroll, you can close down the account. You can use this new email to sign up for mailing lists by visiting the various admission pages or using their website search window in the corner, usually of the page, using phrases like more information or inquiry. This is an easy way to demonstrate your interest in a specific school, and it allows you to gather the materials that you would have otherwise received at college fairs that were canceled this spring. As I promised earlier, you can anticipate some flexibility with the application process. And specifically, I'm going to talk with you about the idea of test optional schools, as well as how at least Bridgewater is handling pass-fail grades, and that you might be able to anticipate some flexibility with deadlines potentially in the fall. So, test optional. The College Board has canceled their May and June test dates. The latest I've seen is that they're hoping to offer weekend SAT administrations every month through the end of the calendar year, beginning in August. Students ought to be able to register online for these test dates starting anytime this month. So we'll be visiting the College Board website periodically for updates. Test optional has been a national trend since before the coronavirus outbreak. The rate of conversion has only increased since COVID-19 crisis began. Even the highly selective schools like Harvard and the University of California system have announced at least temporary test optional policies, if only for the 2021 application process. The way that schools implement their test option policies vary wildly, so please seek clarification before you apply to a particular school. ESU has been test optional for the past 3 years, so we don't require standardized tests for admission. They may help, especially in situations where an applicant's recalculated cumulative GPA is below a 3.0 or B. They're also typically used at most schools, including BSU, for awarding of merit scholarships. And if your scores are high enough, they may be substituted for placement exams for English or math, depending on where you enroll. In other words, it's usually in your best interest to take standardized tests, at least to have the option to submit them to schools. We know many high schools have implemented pass-fail grading, at least for the fourth quarter of the academic year. And this is fine with us at BSU. We consider a passing grade as meeting the core unit required. On a related note, we still require the 17 core classes as designated by the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education for admission standards. They allow a pass-fail grade for these units. BSU will not use the pass grade for recalculation in the GPA. But otherwise, you don't have to worry if you're getting passing grades for your junior year, they'll still count towards the required core courses. We're already seeing a lot of schools extending their deposit deadlines this spring for incoming freshmen from May 1st to June 1st. It's too early to tell whether this trend will continue into the application process for the fall. Most of us in higher education are hoping that we'll return to normal business practices by then, and time will tell whether you'll see similar flexibility with deadlines for early action, early decision, regular application deadlines. So my advice is to anticipate a traditional timeline for the fall, but also keep yourself apprised of the latest announcements on the websites of the schools where you're applying. So perhaps the most exciting piece of news for students who are currently juniors looking to apply to colleges next year is that you'll be able to anticipate that schools will have to offer more letters of admission. Perhaps the most exciting piece of news for juniors going into their senior year who are applying to colleges is that colleges will have to be making more offers of admission. In the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about things that contribute to this trend, things like the demographic decline, the impact of the economic crisis, and the fact that more students are going to want to be staying closer to home. It's no secret that there are fewer students of college-bound age graduating from high schools for the next 15 years. The map here on the screen illustrates that the college-going population on average nationwide will drop by 15% between 2025 and 2029 and continue to decline by another percentage point or two thereafter. There are just fewer kids being born, and the problem is worse in our region of the country, where the national trend is coupled with the fact that it's really expensive to raise a family in the Northeast. We're having fewer kids, and some of our neighbors with kids are moving to less expensive regions of the country. If we zoom in to a more detailed map of Massachusetts, you can see the projections of just how severe this trend is going to be, all the way down to the county level. The southeastern corner of the state, where Bridgewater is located, is going to see some of the steepest declines. So that's the demographic decline. Now, let's talk about how this benefits you. In Massachusetts, we benefit from having a high concentration of colleges and universities, all competing for the same pool of potential students. If there are fewer prospective students, then some schools are going to have to wade into pools where they haven't had to in the past. Consequently, many schools will have to make more offers of admission to yield the same class size as prior years. You see, not every student who applies gets admitted, and not every admitted student enrolls everywhere where they've been accepted. Let's take a minute and pull back the curtain on college admission process from the school's perspective. As an applicant, you are undoubtedly obsessing about the acceptance rates of the schools on your list. An acceptance rate is the percentage of applicants that are accepted by a school during an admission cycle. The lower the number, the more selective the school. For example, Harvard is among the most selective schools in the world, with an acceptance rate of only 5%. On the other end of this equation, us admission professionals obsess over our yield rates, which is the percentage of accepted students that enroll. We do our best to anticipate how many offers of acceptance we have to send in order to get our optimal number of incoming students. As I said a moment ago, not everyone who's offered admission enrolls, because students apply to more than one school and hopefully receive multiple offers. Again, just to pick on Harvard, you may think that everyone who's admitted to Harvard enrolls at Harvard. And don't get me wrong, Harvard's a magical place and it enjoys among the highest yield rates on the planet. So it may come as a surprise that they have an 82% yield rate and not 100%. So if not even Harvard can count on having all of their admitted students enroll, you can only imagine how us mere mortals in the business must struggle to predict our yield rates. And by mere mortals, I mean those of us who are closer to the national average of 67% acceptance rates and 34% yields. The most common practice for us is to use historic trend data to generate all sorts of regression analysis and predictive modeling to anticipate our yield rates. Well, as you know, we're in unprecedented times, which means that all of this is thrown out the window for this fall. Again, the benefit to you is that some schools may need to send more offers of admission to applicants to yield the same size class as in the past, which means if you include a few stretch schools on your list of places where you apply in the coming year, one of those additional offers of admission may be mailed to you. So this year, more than ever, don't be scared to stretch. The roller coaster stock market and ever-increasing unemployment rates don't seem to have an end in sight. Those of us who are saved or cleared our debt in anticipation of cash flowing our kids through college are scared. If you're planning on taking out loans and counting on future earnings to manage the debt, it's frightening to think how uncertain earnings are now with an unemployment rate rising daily. The economy is absolutely going to impact the college search process for students considering schools up and down the price point scale. Those that are planning to pay for privates may now seriously be considering local public alternatives. The public institutions aren't immune either. For example, BSU has 30% of our enrolled students who are considered high financial need. And for some of them, we will not be able to offer enough aid, or they won't have part-time jobs that are closing their funding gap. BSU will have some admitted students who will opt to enroll instead at a community college with the intention of transferring to us later. My point here returns to the issue of anticipated yield grades. Colleges and universities are likely going to be admitting more students in these uncertain times to yield the same class sizes in previous years. And this may be a good thing for you. The coronavirus could have a huge impact on how far from home students will be willing to go. We've all watched the maps like on your screen on the news depicting the daily spread of this global pandemic. We've all witnessed it ignite in regional hotspots, smolder for several weeks, only to flare up again somewhere else. Economics and emotion aside, some students will choose schools closer to home over those that are nearer the epicenter of the corona hotspots. I was hearing from a colleague in the Boston area as early as this fall that applications were down significantly from China. And that's when our only worries were the trade war. It's easy to imagine that international applications in general will be down significantly in the coming year. This will benefit local students who may be considering Boston area schools that otherwise rely on full-pay international students to generate a large percentage of their annual revenue. And again, this may end up benefiting you. And again, as promised, you as applicants in the coming admission cycle can anticipate more generous aid offers from schools. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about the importance that everyone fill out the FAFSA form this fall. And we'll touch briefly on the federal coronavirus relief bill and how it's increased need-based aid for students. And then finally, I'll explain this phenomenon of deeper discounting at schools. In the past, I've heard families tell me that they're not going to fill out the FAFSA form because it was either too intrusive or they felt like they weren't going to be eligible for any aid. I get it, but things have changed. Everyone within the sound of my voice ought to be planning to file a FAFSA and apply for financial aid. We live in uncertain times, and in no area is there more uncertainty than in the economy. You simply can't predict what's going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. So it's best to keep your options open and apply for financial aid well before the priority deadlines. One bright spot in these difficult days was the passing of federal legislation to infuse $16 billion into private and public higher education nationwide. Bridgewater received $8.8 million in emergency federal funding via the stimulus bill. For all schools, half of these funds must be used to directly assist students with emergency financial aid and be spent within 1 year of receipt. This federal funding will augment our already existing $27 million in institutional aid in Bridgewater. Other institutions will have similar boosts in their available institutional aid budgets for the coming academic year. Hopefully, you'll benefit from this. I want to spend a few moments explaining to you this concept of tuition discounting. Now, tuition discounting is an increasing common phenomenon in higher education that has been adopted by both public and private colleges and universities. Tuition discounting is when schools advertise an inflated list price and then offer deals that reduce that amount for select students to entice them to enroll. I've seen this myself using online net price calculators with my oldest son, who's a solid B+ student in his junior year. His performance is about average for an aspiring college-bound student. So imagine my surprise when we started seeing merit discounts of $10,000 to $15,000 at some schools without even formally applying for admission or financial aid. Schools are going to be strapped for cash this coming year, but many will double down on merit money, hoping to make up for it with net tuition revenue from their overall enrollment. If you're encountering colleges that are advertising inflated sticker prices and then discounting more than 50% off their sticker price, you ought to be cautious. There's serious question as to whether some of these schools are going to be in business long enough to grant your student a degree. Think of it in these terms. If someone docked your annual family income by 50%, how long would you be able to sustain your household budget? Don't get me wrong. The more selective schools with big endowments like Harvard or even Boston College can comfortably cover 100% of student unmet need, and it's business as usual. If your student's in that category, congratulations. You've obviously worked really hard and it will pay off. It's just that this is not a sustainable revenue model for most smaller, less selective private schools. Boston Magazine reported recently that over the past 5 years, Eastern Massachusetts alone has seen 8 colleges shut down or merge with larger institutions. We just saw it recently with Pine Manor and Boston College. Believe me, I've taken those calls from crying students and parents from Oneida and Newbury College who paid several years of a private school price tag, only to have those schools close before they've earned their degree. It's gut-wrenching experience for everyone involved. All indications are that this trend of college closures has been significantly accelerated by the economic effects of the coronavirus pandemic. There are still safe harbors out there in higher education. Be sure to check out the 2019 Forbes magazine article depicted on this slide, where they offer an online report card illustrating the fiscal health of private colleges and universities in the US. The Forbes list doesn't include public universities, but we will undoubtedly see consolidation in public higher education systems with underperforming campuses closing. All of that having been said, however, I assure you that Bridgewater State University has been around since 1840, and we ain't going nowhere. BSU is here for you, and we're a safe bet to be around for another 180 years. So in closing, to recap our good news, you, as a prospective student applying to colleges this fall, can anticipate more innovative online outreach, more flexible application processes, more offers of admission, and more generous aid offers. So there's a lot to look forward to. Again, I know this is an intimidating process under the best of circumstances, but the best way to remedy that is to take that first step, and then the second step, and the momentum will carry you. I promise this may not look the way that you had imagined it, but it's going to be great. But you just got to get going. So best of luck in your college search process, and thank you again.